Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this webinar. So today we're going to be talking about the digital transformation journey, and that takes us all the way from your current unstructured data through to the importance of an information architecture, using artificial intelligence tools for auto-classification and ROT analysis, redundant, obsolete, transitory. And then we're going to do a little bit of a dive into Microsoft 365, Teams, Yammer, SharePoint, and some of the Microsoft stack. Then we'll talk a little bit about governance and compliance. We'll do a little change management and training. So we're a Microsoft Gold partner. We're also a charter member of the Microsoft Content Services Partner Program, one of 24 companies in the world that are charter members, and we provide consulting services in the entire Microsoft stack. I mean, I've listed a few of them there, M365, Teams, SharePoint, Yammer, Project Cortex, which is the new Microsoft AI knowledge network product. We'll talk a little bit about that. We also do Dynamics and the full Microsoft stack. And as well, we also provide our own products, third-party products, to augment the implementation of a information management program. Themis IA is for information architecture, Themis RM for records management, and Genesis AI for auto-classification. We'll be looking at using artificial intelligence and machine learning for ROT analysis and auto-classification. Today, studies show that 80% of an organization's data is in unstructured storage, which represents kind of the unholy trinity of people not being able to find information, people having legal risk in their information, and then the technical debt of carrying around so much information that's not really required. Then we'll talk a little bit about why information architecture is important. There's kind of a rumor out there that with the M365 and move to the cloud, that information architecture is no longer needed. That's not the case. We still need information architecture. We'll talk about M365, Teams, SharePoint, Yammer, which is where people live on a day-to-day basis. Just a fun little fact, MS Teams now has 75 million users and growing every day. We'll talk about Microsoft's new product, Project Cortex, which is a knowledge network, a knowledge hub. And then we'll talk about governance and compliance, managing risk in the organization, retention, disposition, and so forth, user engagement and training. So your host today, Cham Tanh, is the Chief Technical Officer at HELUX and the visionary behind our product line. He speaks at lots of SharePoint Saturdays, and I'm sure looking at the attendee list, not lots of you know Cham as a passionate developer and blogger. And then we're very delighted to have Erica Telly with us today, who's a Microsoft MVP in Office apps and services. Erica speaks at conferences around the world, internationally recognized speaker, and she's worked with 75, 80 of the Fortune 500 companies on implementations for information management, SharePoint, Teams, M365, and so forth. We're also looking forward to Erica's upcoming book on Office 365 compliance, which is due in the fall. Pleased to say that HELUX is providing some of the technical review for that book.
So as an organization, the first step in your digital transformation journey is to recognize that you have this level of content chaos. I have a little nice picture depicting the content chaos monster. What is really the content chaos monster? Well, typically it's content that has been siloed off. That's content that's kind of tucked away and very difficult to find. It's content that could be in highly secured folders where you don't really require that level of security. It could be content that's in personal folders or locked away in another repository that is not generally accessible. And then you have content that is redundant, obsolete, or transitory. Short way of saying ROT. And that's content that have become stale or duplicate versions of a document or content that has a service purpose and is no longer in use. So the idea is that if we can reduce the amount of ROT, it would actually uncover the actual documents that are of business value. And then we have unstructured and misclassified documents. Those are documents or content that really has no rhyme or reason on how it's organized or have been misclassified, making it difficult for end users to find. This can easily cause a loss in productivity and forcing users to make decisions based on incorrect information or users recreating information since they couldn't find it initially. One of the primary driving forces of the content chaos monster, as John had indicated, was really unstructured content that covers 80% of the content within an organization. I'm looking at this infographic. You can see that the amount of growth is very scary, really. The volume of digital information and data is increasing at rates never witnessed before. We now live in a world where the number of devices outnumber the humans, and we can't possibly consume all of it. In fact, the volume of content is doubling every 2 years, and by 2020, the digital universe, the data we create and copy annually will grow by a factor of 10, from 4.4 zettabytes in 2014 to 44 zettabytes. Gartner and IDC estimate that within organizations, as I said, over 80% of this is unstructured, that consists of documents, emails, and videos. So the key question here is, how do we manage all this content effectively, and how do we surface information to our employees in a way that it's contextual and personalized in order to help them with the right insights at the right time? So the first step in taming this content chaos monster is defining a proper information architecture. It's defining how content and information is organized through the usage of metadata. Having metadata strengthens your strategy for data governance, compliance, and security, but it sometimes could be challenging. Some of the challenges with defining or having a information architecture strategy is that it's time consuming. It requires a lot of people to be involved in a process where you would ultimately have to publish that information architecture to your enterprise content management system. Once an IA has been defined, then there's this reliance on end users to help tag documents and to also correctly tag. Without having the proper metadata tags, information will not surface the way you want. Obviously, there's ROT that you have to deal with, legacy content, right? You don't want to spend time in defining metadata for documents that provide no business value. So to help with this, HELUX has a product called Themisia that helps streamline the process of designing and publishing your information architecture. So the benefits of Themisia really helps turn the complex and time-intensive task of building an information architecture and automating the deployment of that through a collaborative environment. We found that Themisia cuts the deployment times by 50% or more. Since we handle the actual publishing, we guarantee 100% error-free deployment, where in other cases where you would have a development team in place, there's that whole QA lifecycle that needs to happen. Also have a collaborative environment where you can provide feedback to your designs by end users and have it part of an iterative process in terms of rolling out a information architecture. So we've developed a step-by-step wizard, which allows you to first design and then ultimately publish your information architecture to the underlying platform. So we have an analyst wizard that helps define your information architecture, which essentially provides you what we call blueprint templates, standardized information architectures that you can start off with. It's like creating a new document in Word and having an invoice template. By having something to start off with, other than starting from scratch, helps accelerate the development of your IA. Then we have this designer capability where we can design the IA, build out your site structures, your navigation, your content types, your taxonomy, as well as your security. And by having a visualization tool to kind of depict how that information architecture is designed and configured, you can easily provide that design to your business users to get confirmation and approval on it. Once you have confirmation from your end users that this is the design that works for them, you can deploy your information architecture to a sandbox or a production environment. And you repeat the process until you get it right. The really cool thing about this is that as end users who are involved in the design process, they really get a look and feel and a way to actually play with the design before they actually go live, as opposed to looking at design spreadsheets or Excel spreadsheets and not really understanding what they've designed until they actually go live. So you really cut down the QA time and basically streamline the process of user acceptance. And once you have the complete design, everything's been approved, you can actually switch your deployment to the production environment and therefore go live. So we found this whole process has allowed us and our customers to be able to push out SharePoint sites in the Office 365 ecosystem relatively quickly. All right, so you have an information architecture defined in a brand new, let's say, SharePoint environment. The next step is to actually take the content that you have in your legacy systems, like a file share, and move that over. Well, that consists of a migration exercise. And we all know that migration is very painful, but it's beneficial to have all your legacy information or all your content from the previous system all in the new system. And if you're looking to have that migrate with all the metadata that you've defined for your new system, that's going to be a tedious process for the end users. So what we're looking to do is, in order to make this process easier and to maintain your strategy for a proper information architecture, you really need to rely on what we call auto-classification. Auto-classification is essentially for having a system automatically tag your documents with metadata. And by having metadata exposed, we can actually leverage that to route documents in our migration scenario to other structured destinations. When it comes to auto classifications, there's really three approaches. In typical applications that you've seen in the past, you've seen the rule-driven approach where you can use existing metadata that you can find, let's say in this, your file system properties, things like create date, modified date, or possibly the user profile, or maybe the location of where it's coming from. Drawing metadata from those existing metadata, you can define if-else rules to define new metadata tags. We know that this is very limited in terms of what you can do with auto classification, and so that hasn't really allowed an organization to effectively perform auto classification. With the advancements of artificial intelligence, you have machine learning models where we can use classification models to actually extract the type of document and automatically extract the metadata based on the content of the document. So the idea here is to use intelligence to actually process and look at the document as if you were a human being and to automatically extract that metadata. This allows us to dramatically reduce the burden on end users for tagging, but as well as being able to take the rule-driven approach to a larger scale when it comes to classifications of many documents. And then the third approach is combined. It is the ultimate approach where you can have both rule-driven and machine learning models to define your auto classification strategy. I just want to drill a little deeper into the machine learning classification. Having machine learning models, the way it works is that you're able to define a classification based on the model understanding similar properties or features associated to each document. By understanding those features, you're able to group them into certain classifications. And by using text analytics, we're able to extract the metadata from the document. So for example, I can recognize a certain document to be of an invoice and be able to extract automatically the invoice number from the actual document. A machine learning model is great. However, the challenges around this is that it is time consuming in terms of training a model. It's heavily iterative and requires a lot of attention. Also requires a data scientist and a subject matter expertise and a lot of data actually to be able to do this right. So the preferred approach when it comes to machine learning is what Microsoft calls machine teaching or automated machine learning, which basically removes the complexities of training a model and reduces the need of a data scientist to help with defining classifiers that will allow you to automatically classify your documents and extract the metadata. Using HELUX's Genesis AI with Project Cortex for auto classification and migration will allow you to do this and develop simple machine learning models without little knowledge in data scientists. So Project Cortex, some of you may have heard about it, some of you may not, is a new product offering from Microsoft that really provides a true knowledge network in Microsoft 365, leveraging artificial intelligence. I think having knowledge network systems or knowledge management systems weren't possible until AI came into the ecosystem. The capabilities of Project Cortex provides capabilities around three areas: manage, organize, and empower. And in the manage area, Microsoft is looking to provide you with capabilities to connect data across all of Microsoft 365, also to ingest content outside of Microsoft 365 using artificial intelligence and be able to feed that information back into the knowledge network. Ensuring that knowledge is up to date across your different teams and systems is essential in having a successful knowledge network, which really covers the organized area. And the last area is being able to provide that knowledge just in time in all the apps that you use every day so that users can make informed decisions based on the latest information. So how does Genesis AI work for you, or how can it help with auto classification? What we've developed here is basically AI-powered information architecture generation. So being able to extract the metadata from documents automatically kind of helps us define an information architecture that you can start off with. So similar to Themisia, where we have standardized templates, we can actually use Genesis AI to kind of cater those information architect templates based on the documents that you currently have within your organization. We can also use it for reclassification of documents, being able to take a set of documents that have been currently tagged and replace them with a set of new tags based on certain rules and conditions that you develop, and honestly be able to use the metadata that you extract to intelligently migrate and route your documents, and to be able to handle ROT by removing duplicates and be able to exclude things from your new system so that you don't have to spend additional time tagging those documents. So the idea behind Genesis AI is the ability to create an enrichment job. The enrichment job consists of really 3 stages. The first stage is performing ROT by removing redundant, obsolete, transfer documents. The second stage is using the models that we provide through Genesis AI, as well as Project Cortex, to classify automatically your documents and to extract the metadata. Once the metadata surfaces, you can actually use that to route and tag your documents into the new system. So here we have an enrichment job where you can see that we've created a job to discover a bunch of files. And we can see that there's a bunch of system properties that you can discover or identify. And then in the section below, there is being able to apply a list of ROT criteria where I can exclude files based on file paths, extensions, so things like MDBs or PST files that you don't want to process as part of your enrichment, you can certainly do that. We can process files based on age, so I can exclude things that are 5 years or older, and as well as be able to exclude duplicates from the enrichment job. So looking at auto classification, basically is configuring what classification models that you want to include as part of your enrichment. As you can see here, I have contract, purchase order, purchase charters. So these are the different types of documents we can classify. This list is much longer, and this is the metadata that we have that can be extracted for each model. Genesis provides a set of general document type classifiers. Looking how we integrate with Project Cortex will provide the machine teaching capabilities that allows a customer to really tailor the models to their documents and to the specific versions of the document in terms of layouts. By working with Project Cortex, we really provide an auto classification strategy that works across the board. And in routing tag, we have metadata that has been surfaced from the auto classification stage. We can create a rule where we can take actions based on the metadata that it's found. In this example, I can create a rule that targets only invoices and routes it to a certain destination in SharePoint and be able to extract the metadata from that document and tag it in the SharePoint destination. That's what Genesis AI provides in terms of auto classification and what Project Cortex does. We really believe that the combination of Project Cortex and Genesis AI is a match made in heaven. It works stronger together. Project Cortex, as I said, allows you to build simple models through machine teaching, not requiring the knowledge of a data scientist or the subject matter expertise. Where Genesis AI reduces the amount of processing that's needed if you're able to kind of remove anything that's redundant, obsolete, or transitory, and then leverage the models that you've defined in Project Cortex as part of our intelligent bulk migration. Together, we're able to effectively remove the burden of tagging for end users and then provide a stronger strategy when it comes to data governance, compliance, and security, because now you have metadata that has been associated to your documents, which allows you to now manage it going forward.
Us here on this webinar are probably a little more geeky about these tools than your average person. So let's take a moment to shift back to the end user's perspective and what the results of all of this information architecture and AI tagging will produce. So when I speak with customers, I notice that the majority of them don't know everything that they own in the Office 365 ecosystem. We might be familiar with things like Word or SharePoint or PowerPoint, but there's pretty much an app for anything that you could want to do related to productivity in the enterprise. So just as an example, one app that I think not everybody knows about is the Microsoft ToDo. So Microsoft ToDo allows you to organize personal tasks to get your to-do list done. It syncs with your Outlook tasks that you may already be using, as well as tasks that you might be assigned by your team in Planner, and then puts them all in one place so you have a to-do list every day that you can go to. And most exciting, there's also Teams integration coming soon. Another app that's sort of new that we were actually using today on the webinar is Microsoft Forms. They're usually used for things like surveys or data collection. And then as of last month, they're also discoverable via our compliance tools, such as eDiscovery. So you can now collect that data in a compliant manner. And then just one more example is Microsoft Stream. So this is like YouTube for the enterprise, where you can post videos, everything from meeting recordings that you've done in Teams to how-to videos and training, or really anything that you could want. And when you do record a meeting in Teams, it automatically uploads it to Stream and transcribes it. And then very soon that will also be available through our compliance tools. But really, Teams is the hub for teamwork. End users can go there to do their work across all of these apps every day. So in the past, we've been very focused on having the end user experience fit our needs as the IT kind of solution designer, because we had to ensure that our solution was compliant and that it followed our governance policies. And so we enforced that through having the users put documents in a very specific place, or really like their workflow had governance in mind first rather than their needs first. So one thing that Teams really does in a powerful way is allows the end user to customize their view of their work in a way that suits their personal workflow or their team's workflow. They can use tabs to add integrations with other Office 365 apps, or even apps that exist outside of Office 365. So then changes that are made to Teams will then sync to all content locations where compliance and governance are enforced. And at the end of the day, the end users are working how they want. But then on the back end, we are enforcing compliance and governance. So we're still meeting those needs of IT. So let's look at a specific example of how Teams can integrate tasks across the organization. So you may or may not be aware that tasks are being created in more places than ever. As an example, they recently added the ability to tag somebody in an Office document in a comment and have that be automatically added as a task for them to resolve that comment. We also have Cortana now monitoring our emails and very helpfully suggesting when someone might have asked us to complete a task in an email. Other traditional locations are places like OneNote, where you keep your meeting notes and maybe track tasks there. And then there's just even more examples that I have here on the slide. So what are you going to do? Are you going to remember to go to each one of those locations to find all of your tasks? Probably not. So instead, we can use a combination of Microsoft Teams bringing together tasks from all of these different locations across the ecosystem, and then use Planner to organize our team tasks or team projects, and then still have ToDo as our personal task list. But both of those, both Planner and ToDo, can be viewed in the new Teams task tool that's coming out very soon. Another story is around Yammer. If your Teams is really great for working with kind of your inner circle or the people that you collaborate most with every day, right? Your immediate teammates. Where Yammer really shines is promoting collaboration across the enterprise. As an example, you may be a project manager, and you may be the project manager in a certain department or a certain geography, but there's benefits to connecting with project managers across your company. You may not even know their names. What Yammer does is help you connect to other people in your role. It helps connect executives to employees in the organization, or it helps connect your expertise to people who need it. They can ask questions in Yammer, tag it with your expertise, and you can find it and answer the question. So what's really powerful is how we can integrate together Yammer with Microsoft Teams as the hub for our daily work. So there's two different ways that we can do that. First, you can add a specific Teams group as a tab in your Teams team, your workspace. So here on the screen, you can see that we've added the Mark 8 project Yammer group, where people from across the company can ask questions about this project, and added it to our Mark 8 project team general channel. Instead of having to leave the Teams experience to answer those questions, we can do it right here in Microsoft Teams. This is the second way that Yammer can integrate into Microsoft Teams. So now there's a Yammer Communities app that you can access by clicking on the left-hand navigation. And here you're going to see a personal view of all your Yammer groups and communities across the organization. So you can access everything from across your groups in one place to get your work done and answer questions. So another great example of how we're integrating these apps together across the enterprise is with Microsoft Search. For those that aren't familiar with Microsoft Search, Microsoft is going through and adding a single search UI, or experience is a better word, across all Office 365 apps. No matter where you go, you'll see a search bar, and the search bar will automatically be scoped to where you're working. So if you're in a SharePoint document library, by default, it's just going to search that document library. Or if you're in a Word document, by default, it's going to search Word documents. But what's really powerful is from that same search bar, with one click, you can also search across your enterprise. So for example, if you're typing in a Word document and you know there's a piece of information, your colleague shared it, but you can't remember if it was in a SharePoint site, their OneDrive, you can use search to find that information. And what's really cool is that it's personalized to you because we're doing our daily work in Office 365 apps. Office 365 is able to collect signals about what we're doing. They know that there's documents that were shared with me. They know that I opened and looked at that document and that I've been collaborating on that document. And so it's going to put that higher in the search results than, say, someone else's document that uses similar terms. Most exciting is I was actually able to confirm from Bill Baer, the product manager on Twitter this morning, that they are in fact integrating Microsoft Search in the Microsoft Teams search bar this calendar year. So we'll start to see some improvements next month in terms of being able to search with the right context. And then we'll see more of these integrations as time goes on this year. Bringing this back to Cham's points on information architecture, how does Teams relate to information architecture and the things that we need to accomplish as solution architects in our organization? So while Teams is the view for the end user into their daily work, the information architecture inside these apps and between the apps still exists. So we're able to get the best of both worlds. So just as an example, in Microsoft Teams, when you upload a document, it's actually adding it to a SharePoint document library. So we're using SharePoint in Teams for our files. So inside SharePoint, we have a couple pivots on information architecture. For example, we have a home site, which brings together all the sites in our organization, kind of like your traditional landing page for your intranet. Then you have hub sites, which are like maybe the department pages, like you might have a hub site for finance or for sales. Then you have your communication sites. We're able to create news stories to be shared with maybe a specific hub site, maybe all the way up to the home site. Maybe you just want to share the news with a specific role and do some audience targeting. No problem. Those information architecture tools exist. And then, of course, we have our traditional team sites and document libraries as well. That hasn't changed. For example, for task management, if we look at the information architecture containers inside Planner, we can build standalone plans to track tasks and projects. We could have a planner that's associated with a Teams group or an Office 365 group. And then within that, we have our information divided out into boards and tasks. So what we're able to do is apply our governance or compliance policies to each one of these containers. So each bullet point would be a container, but then the user in Teams can pick and choose which containers they want to see. And then just to round it out, so Yammer, you can view things for the all company. You can view things by a Yammer group, which actually is recently being renamed to Yammer Communities. So I need to update that. And then within the groups, you have posts, you have replies, and then also private messages. So why am I telling you all this? When we get to the security, compliance, and governance needs of your organization, we're going to be applying the specific settings for those at the container level. So it's important for us to understand how the containers are structured, how information architecture exists in these containers, so we can make decisions about how to apply compliance. So let's go and look at a specific example of that. With compliance, it's all about the categories. So here's some examples. If you want to apply retention, then that's going to be applied based on these information architecture categories or containers. If it exists in a certain SharePoint site, then apply this retention policy. For records management, in addition to retention, you might need to do disposition reviews. So you can create your disposition processes or your specific reviewers and approvers based on these categories or containers. And then for e-discovery, you're trying to search and find the information that's relevant to your case or your investigation. Being able to choose certain containers or categories of information is very useful for quickly getting down to the most relevant information. If you are an organization such as a finance organization that requires communication supervision, then you can create your policies to supervise the right people and the right information according to those categories. And then finally, for security, you can apply information protection and their settings based on these categories as well. So this is an example of retention in SharePoint. As we mentioned on the previous slide, when we're planning our information architecture, these are the options that we have available. So first of all is the type of site. So we have 3 types of sites. We have the home site, which is the enterprise level site, the landing page, and then we have our hub sites, which are focused around a specific topic, or I've seen people use the hub site for all projects. And then we have our team sites, which are more for collaboration, and our communication sites, which are more for a few people to broadcast information out to many people, as opposed to for daily collaboration needs. So within communication sites, we're mostly creating news posts. We can also do things like create links lists or other things, but news is one of the main things we're doing. And then in team sites, we're still looking at putting things into document libraries and lists and organizing them with document sets. And then across everything in SharePoint, we can be using content types, which designate a type of document, such as a contract or a purchase order. And we can find or tag things with content types no matter in which area of the structure they live. And then we can also use our term sets or taxonomy to tag certain things with certain terms to get specific. Okay, so when we take this structure and apply it to compliance, specifically retention, this is where it all comes together. So for example, let's say that we have a hub site for projects. Now it's on the home site as a navigation item, and maybe we'll roll up some key information, but mostly if you're working on projects, you're working in the project hub area. For each project in your organization, you provision a team site, and this project team site has a template that you've defined as the information architect for your company. Now, as we create more sites, projects B, project C, and to infinity, it's all going to use that same template. The benefit being that it drives consistency across your organization, so end users know where to find things quickly because they're used to what a project site looks like. But also, more importantly, it allows us to consistently apply our information protection, governance, and compliance policies. So within our site template, we have our, let's say, contracts document library. So users know when I have a project contract, I'm going to put it in this library. And then maybe we also have a library for deliverables. Well, as the information architect who needs to worry about things like compliance, we know a couple things. So first of all, we need to keep all of our contracts for 7 years, and we need to keep all of our deliverables for 3 years. When somebody puts a document into the contracts library, we'd have it automatically assign a content type of contracts, and then when they put it in the deliverables library, it automatically uses the content type deliverables. And then additionally, at the site level, everything in that site, no matter what library you've put it in, would be tagged with something like the project end date. We would then trigger the retention policies to start the 7 or the 3 year retention based on that project end date. So what does that look like? We've identified the type of document using a content type. That's the orange star. And that's how we know what is a contract and needs a 7 year retention versus what's a deliverable that needs the 3 year retention. And then with the yellow star, that's how we've triggered the actual retention period. Everything in the project is associated with the project end date. So we know when that end date occurs to automatically start the clock on the retention period. For the records managers out there, this is just event-based retention, but this is how we make this all work using these categories. Now, when this becomes even more powerful is when you can enforce that information architecture and that structure and have it enforced easily without a developer's help. And then also it becomes even more powerful when we can use things like artificial intelligence to maybe fill out some of this metadata for us. Like when we put something into the contracts library, it pulls out things like the project end date automatically, or invoice numbers, or other pieces of key metadata we need to run our projects efficiently. So that's where Themis really can help us, is to, number one, help enforce that information architecture. So this is an example of a site design in Themis. So as we can see here, we have our business services site template, and we're able to add in content types automatically to that template. We'd also be able to do things like define permission structures here, add certain metadata fields, etc. And then if we look at like how this looks maybe more as a hierarchical map. If we zoom in, we can see as an example that the blue information for client portal is the site template. So here we've set our permissions, and we could probably set other metadata as well. And then in purple, these are those document libraries. So we can see that we have some document sets in our projects library that has certain metadata values with it. And we can see there's additional document fields and metadata that we want to collect. Then with templates, we've also defined our metadata, whether or not it's required. And then the green information is our list template. So if we want to collect unstructured data in a list, we can design that here. And then the red underneath some of the boxes are folders that we want to have in these libraries. So without having to go in and either configure each individual site, clicking around, we're able to define the template and push it out to all project sites. If we need to do updates, we can make that here and push them out to all sites. And we're not having to write any code to do it, which can be very expensive and time consuming both to create and maintain. Additionally, Cham mentioned the upcoming artificial intelligence tool. We'd also be able to fill out some of these fields in the document libraries automatically based on what's put in there. So that's our summary of the value that we can bring to the end users through things like teams, as well as how you can enforce the needed governance and compliance based on information architecture. Thank you very much.
Change management and training, obviously a very important part of any program, information management program that you undertake, wherever you are in your digital management or your digital transformation journey. Change management and training is going to be a critical part of that. Just to distill this down, what's really important is that we have top level support, so support from the organizational level, and that we have support from the end users. So getting the executive approval is critical. And then what we call project champions, some organization call them stewards, whoever those people are, filtered across the organization, across the different functional business units, who can work hand in glove with the end users, explaining to them the change, getting their input, doing the requirements elicitation so that it's not just a one-way traffic of conversation and kind of thou shalt do thus approach. It's really, really important that we engage everybody in the process. Equally important is that we generate short-term wins. So don't try and boil the ocean with these kinds of projects. Determine what short-term wins are available to you and go after those. And then the users start to come on board with it because they see the change happening. They see their participation having an impact on their day-to-day work life. You know, that really empowers people, and then management can start seeing all of the reporting and so forth, and we can really make a nice community of end users and management working together towards a common goal. I'm just going to finish by saying if anybody is interested in contacting us, we're of course very interested in providing services around your information management program, helping you with your digital transformation journey. We're here to help. You can get information on our website on how to contact us, helux.ai, HELUX.ai. Okay, well, I'd just like to thank everybody in closing for taking time out of your busy schedules and joining us. Thanks, everyone.